In this video, I'm going to do a few things. Number one is I'm going to share with you what is a VPN, virtual private network. I'm also going to share with you what they do, what they don't do, and maybe my ideas or opinions as to who would benefit from using a VPN. So first of all, what is a VPN? So have you ever been on a public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, an airport, or hotel and wondered who's watching? Who can see what I'm doing? Who can see where I'm going? Well, the answer is, unless you're very, very careful, which means being skeptical and paying attention, it's possible that someone's watching what you're doing in these public Wi-Fis. Now, a VPN, virtual private network for short, this creates a private connection between your device, your PC, your Mac, your tablet, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, whatever, between your device and the internet. And in plain English, what it does is it protects your information, and so that it's harder for websites and advertisers to track you, and it's harder for hackers to see what you're doing because your data is encrypted and they can't get to that encrypted data. People regularly use VPNs for this extra, and the word is extra, privacy, for safer browsing when they're on public Wi-Fi, more so than when they're in their home. And again, it adds a layer of protection when you're doing everyday things like checking your email, your banking, and logging into private accounts. Now, know this, if you're not using a VPN, and even in your home using your internet here, I happen to be on Xeris, but that's just one of the network ISPs that I use, internet service providers. Know this, that they can see where you go. Now, going to HTTPS, which are secure websites, is by far the most beneficial security thing you can do. Make sure you're always on a secure site, HTTPS. And you'll know you're on an HTTPS site if you point at the URL in the address bar and you see HTTPS, and or you click on the little icon and it says content is secure. That's the most important thing you can do to protect yourself. Now, VPNs do not stop cookies, and they don't stop social media sites from tracking you. They don't stop pixel cookies, and they don't stop browser tracking, et cetera, et cetera. All of that can still happen, and a lot of that is part of our degradation of our privacy. Security and privacy is really a matter of trust. Can we trust that site? Have we read their privacy statement? Have we read their terms of service, et cetera, so that we can understand, can we trust them? By the way, no matter what you do, VPN or not, a secure website or not, you cannot be 100% private. There's no way. So what do VPNs do well? Well, first of all, they combat censorship. That's probably one of the biggest uses of VPNs, is combating censorship. If you're in China, you may want to use a VPN to be able to get to Netflix and YouTube and CNN, et cetera, because the state-censored sites cannot see where you're going if you're using a virtual private network, i.e. a tunnel. Another great use of VPNs is to access what's called geo-restricted content. Football games get blocked out, baseball games get blocked out. They get blacked out because you're living in North Carolina and you're trying to watch the North Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers playing, and it's blacked out. But if you use a VPN and you connect to YouTube in another city or another state that may not be blacked out, you can access what's called geo-restricted content. Another thing that VPNs do is they hide information about where you want to connect. This is called DNS requests. It's where you go to the internet and you go to a DNS server and you say, hey, I want to go to CNN. I want to go to, Samsung. I want to go to Dell.com. When you type in Dell.com or Samsung.com, whatever, your browser's got to hit a DNS server to find the IP address to know how to get you there. That data is not restricted in any way unless you're using a VPN, and then your internet service provider can't see those requests and they can't see where you're going. Now, what does a VPN not do? It doesn't make you anonymous. A VPN can hide your IP address from the websites, but it can't hide you logging into Google or Facebook or YouTube. And it can't hide cookies and account activity that's monitored by the sites that you go to. And that data is being tracked by Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, and that data is also being shared using their privacy statement, staying within the lines of the privacy statement. That data about you is being shared with others. VPNs cannot stop that from happening. VPNs don't protect you from phishing or scams. Because if you go to a website, you get an email message comes in with a phishing, message in there. VPNs can't stop that from happening. They still show up. A bad link, a fake invoice, or if you go to a website and a phishing website and you type in your password, a VPN cannot stop that. And furthermore, VPNs can't stop viruses or malware. If you go to a website and you click on a link and you tell, that website to download that data, that document, that form, that executable, that virus, or that malware, VPNs don't stop that from happening. They can still happen. And again, VPNs don't stop the apps and the accounts from tracking you. Social media, shopping sites, Temu, Amazon.com, et cetera, they still have the ability to track you because all the VPN does is make the connection secure getting there. But once you get to those sites, everything that was happening before is still happening. And furthermore, VPN in the context of public Wi-Fi, which is where VPNs really started getting developed in using public Wi-Fi, a VPN encrypts the traffic to the VPN server, but it can't fix insecure devices. If your virus protection on your machine, on your PC or your whatever device is not up to date, it's still going to create a risk. If you're using a rogue hotspot at an airport or at a hotel, the VPN is going to make the security of the tunnel to that rogue hotspot. It's going to make it secure, but you're still in a rogue hotspot, and whatever happens can still happen. Another thing that we hear all the time is VPNs don't track our data. They don't track our sites. They don't track our usage. And that may be the case, but you really need to read the privacy statements of all of the VPN sites or the VPN tool you're using so that you feel really comfortable that they are honoring that statement. Before I talk about who should be using or consider using VPNs, let me remind ourselves of this. We are the biggest risk to our privacy and security. Let me repeat. We are the biggest risk of our own privacy and our own security. We need to take and look at everything and be skeptical. We need to be skeptical of every email, every text message, every phone call that we get. We can avoid most of our security and privacy issues if we use more common sense. And I say this, if we slow down a little bit. We get so fast that we don't use common sense. We get moving so fast, click, 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 that we don't stop and validate. We don't stop and get a little skeptical as we should. We can protect our privacy and security better if we use better passwords. I'm a fan of the 12-character uppercase, lowercase number, extended character passwords. Anything less than that is jeopardizing our privacy and our security. We need to use two-factor authentication. And more importantly, we need to use authenticator apps like the Google Authenticator or the Microsoft Authenticator instead of SMS, text messaging authentication. We need to use this everywhere we can. And furthermore, to help ourselves protect our privacy and security, we need to monitor our identities. We need to monitor our financial websites. We need to monitor our devices and our logins and keep everything updated. We need to pay attention. I call it PSA, pay serious attention. When we stop paying attention, that's when we get in trouble. All right, here's my final point. Who should be using a VPN? I think that anybody in business, anybody who's accessing private data, financial data, business data, confidential information, HIPAA-related information, et cetera, I think anybody who is traveling and accessing any kind of private data you should be using a VPN when you're in coffee shops, airports, hotels, hospitals, etc., etc. You should be using a VPN if you're accessing private information from these public Wi-Fi sites. And again, if you're logging in to check your bank, if you're checking your email, paying a bill, shopping on Amazon.com, you may want to consider using a VPN, especially if you're using a network that others are using, such as the examples of hotel, hospitals, coffee shops, etc., etc. If you are concerned about your internet service provider tracking what you're doing, which by the way, I'm not. But some people may be concerned about that because they may be doing really confidential, private activity that they don't want anybody knowing they're doing. I'm not talking about illegal activity. I'm talking about legal activity that may be considered dangerous, like a reporter or an investigative reporter or a private investigator, et cetera, et cetera. If you're doing that kind of activity, even from your home, and you want your internet service provider not to know about it, you may want to use a VPN at home. A lot of businesses require that we use VPNs if we're using our business systems, our CRM system, our sales system, our financial systems. If we're working remotely from home, a lot of businesses require a VPN to add an extra layer of protection so the internet service provider does not see that. Again, let's go back to traveling. If you're at Airbnbs, if you're at hotels, if you're sharing a room with other people in other countries and you're on somebody else's network, then you may very well want to consider using a VPN because it'll keep your data separate and secure from all the other data traveling through that network. Let's go back to the geo location thing. If you want to avoid price discrimination based on where your location is, you may want to consider using a VPN. I see this a lot. People will subscribe to Netflix in another country. I don't want to be an advocate for using a VPN for price discrimination issues where you can get access to Netflix cheaper in this country, get access to other subscriptions cheaper in other countries. But there are a lot of people who use VPNs to get access to content cheaper in other areas than they are in their own country, in their own countries or state. Let me finalize this section by saying this. A VPN is a privacy and safety layer. It's not a magic invisibility cloak. That's not how it works. It's most valuable when you're on networks that you can't control, public Wi-Fis. It's most valuable if you're in your home network and you're accessing highly confidential, secure, private data for your business, and you want to make sure that the connection is secure, that you don't get hacked by people, nefarious actors who could even get onto your Wi-Fi. Is a VPN for everyone? No. Are VPNs worth understanding? Yes. Could there be a justification for you using a VPN? Sometimes, as in when you're traveling? Maybe. But they're not for everybody. So don't jump onto the hype just because that's being marketed as the end-all to everything security and privacy-wise, because they're not. Now, I'm going to create another video, and I'll give you the link to it in the description of this video, but I'm going to create another video and show you how to actually set up a VPN and how to use one.